Okay, welcome to another episode of TechXY Turbo. My name is Frank Gullo, and I am your host. Today we're joined by David Gonzalez, co-founder and CEO of Arbol, a student financial success platform that helps colleges keep more students enrolled by tackling the real financial barriers that cause them to drop out. Arbol partners with colleges and universities to give students a clear, personalized picture of their financial situation and actionable steps they can take, while giving staff the data and tools they need to proactively remove financial roadblocks at scale. As a first-generation college graduate, David has seen firsthand how financial complexity and uncertainty can derail students' education. His work at Arbol is driven by a simple belief: when students have clarity, support, and a sustainable financial plan, they are far more likely to stay enrolled, graduate, and build the futures they envision for themselves. David, it's so good to have you on the podcast. We've been talking about this for weeks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Frank. Thanks for having me.
David, this is a tech podcast, so let's start with your tech backstory. You built a career at the intersection of finance and technology, from implementing conversational AI at HSBC to innovation leadership at M&T Bank, and now founding an EdTech company. How has your relationship with technology evolved across these very different sectors?
Yeah, great question, Frank. And for me, when I first started at HSBC, I was a product manager. I was leading engineering and design teams to build the technology that we were aiming to get adopted both with customers and internal teams. And what I learned right away was building the technology is the easy part. Getting folks to adopt it is the hard part. And that's how my relationship has evolved and has really been consistent across the sectors. At HSBC, it took time and effort to get folks across different teams to align, buy in, and understand how to use the technology. And get a clear understanding of the impacts it would have on people's workflows and lives. And that's the same thing in higher ed. And I'm grateful to have that experience with learning how to, get all the different stakeholders on one page and getting them working towards adopting the technology to hit their goals. And that's how my relationship has changed, has been less about, how are we going to solve the technical problems, and more about how do we get the people that would get the most benefit using it and adopting it accordingly.
Interesting. Use the adoption word. And obviously you're successful because all I hear about is chatbots. So, and you were doing this, before it was cool. So, but let's dig into that a little more. At HSBC, as you say, you led digital product initiatives that delivered millions in cost savings by migrating customer interactions and implementing, automated AI chatbot solutions. So what did you learn, in addition to adoption, about using technology just to solve really complicated customer problems?
Yep. It starts with understanding the end user and the challenges that they're experiencing. The way that we rolled out what we called conversational banking, which included messaging and chat and eventually chatbots, was spending, my first week was spending, actually 90 days was spending time at the contact center, picking up calls, shadowing the folks in the front line so that I get a better understanding on really, the type of work that they're dealing with, the type of interactions. And that gave me a lot of empathy and understanding towards the pressure that they're under to support, millions of contacts. Do it efficiently while keeping, the folks who had customer issues happy. That was one aspect I had to understand. The other aspect was understanding the evolving preferences at the time. This was back in 2015. So folks were starting to use, messaging channels to interact with customer service, and merging that together to understand what the end-to-end experience looks like. So for me, it was very much understanding how things work today, what can we do with the technology, and then start to roadmap out in phases how we will implement it. And that's kind of the approach that I took, and it was definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, like I could see how that has kind of led to your path, and want to get into now your company a little bit. So Arbol, as I understand, it, addresses student retention through financial clarity. And speaking as a parent who now as a child in college, I'm really looking for your clarity here, because it's a really complicated path with FAFSA and all this selection. So I know from my own experience, there are financial literacy programs and portals out there. So for you, what is fundamentally different about the technology approach Arbol is taking, and what makes it more effective than the solutions that had been on the market?
Yeah, let's start with why the solutions on the market are ineffective. So you mentioned financial literacy. Financial literacy really puts the onus on the student and family to do a lot of research to understand how to solve their problem. And for most, that is figuring out how they're going to fund college for not just one term, but all the way until they graduate. And right now, the average student is juggling up to 15 different funding sources to pay for costs that are getting, higher and higher every single year. And so there's a lot of complexity to kind of piece that together. The other kind of set of tooling is the student portals. So when you're stacking 5, 10, 15 different funding sources, all of them have different portals you have to access to apply, secure, and keep your funding. What we do is we bring all of that data that exists in these disparate systems into one place, make sure we have a robust, holistic financial profile of the student, and then we take all of that intelligence that financial literacy makes you go fetch, and we leverage AI to generate the next steps that students can take so that they can close their net cost and also keep their funding all the way until they graduate.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. On the tech side, and speaking as someone else who works in tech, a lot of educational institutions have older technologies. They have legacy systems. So when you were looking to do this and partner with them, how did you develop Arbol technology to make implementation work and go fast and easy with these colleges? I think you're laughing.
Yeah. It's a crawl, walk, run. When we first started with our first 5 institutions, we didn't have any data integrations. What we did was we actually we started with a small population of students, 50 to 100, and we actually collected the data manually and put it into the system and trained our AI to be able to respond to it. That was great because that gave us a bunch of hands-on learning on the nature of the data, the frequency at which it changes, and where it all is stored. As a phase 2, we then created a document capture so that we're able to, extract the data from the documents that they exist. And then a phase 3, we actually, once we had a handle on what data we need, where it exists in the different systems, we then built out 2 versions, a secure FTP to automate the data going to and from the college systems, and then direct integrations of the last step. So we thought about it as very much, let's start with the small data set, small population of students, test out, experiment, make sure we understand what works. Once we got things working, then we started to add the automations from a technology perspective.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for spelling that out. Now, speaking on the student side, and this is, I think, very important to me as a parent. One of your features is detecting students who are in financial crisis early. So on this point, what technology, what data signals do you use to help identify these at-risk students before they really hit the breaking point or are really too far gone? And how does your AI component that you're developing work? And what are you planning with that?
Yeah, and I would start with the basics. Funding college or purchasing a college education is, from my understanding, one of the only things you can purchase without having the full financing figured out. So every year you've got incoming freshmen who are starting to use the service. They're, maybe 3-4 weeks into classes, still haven't figured out how they're going to pay the bill. It's kind of crazy. So what we do instead is we start there where we have an understanding of the student's, college bill, their funding, and detect if there's any sort of gap. If there's a gap, that's the first risk indicator. The next piece that we start to bring in is data on what's available for students. And let's say they are eligible to borrow more, or we can validate that a student has family support that's coming in that will lower their risk score. As we identify that this student really doesn't have any viable paths to be able to pay, that will increase the risk rating. That's one aspect. The other aspect is monitoring students' engagement with their finances. Did they waive their health insurance or make a decision? Did they get through completing FAFSA, state aid, any sort of the applications they need to get through? We combine that, and those factors all demonstrate whether a student is at risk or is stable. And then based on where they're at, we're able to flag not only what the risk level is of the student, but what the next suggested set of actions they should take for both the student and staff member at the institution to follow.
That sounds extremely valuable. And I can see that growing over time, because even I notice it's different right before you're in college, and then first year, second year, and then, some of them, different paths, beyond that. So Arbol is browser-based and mobile responsive, and that seems intentional. So I'm wondering, what design development decisions did you make to balance the back-end sophistication that you have connecting to all these older legacy systems, but yet simplicity on the front end, particularly for a student population that is much more used to their phone than laptops? So talk about those decisions.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the back end. The back end is really connecting all the plumbing and all of the different data sources that students need to aggregate so they get a full financial picture. So we very much is this unification layer in the back end that brings in billing data, financial aid data, credits, housing, anything that informs the student's financial situation into one place. Right now, they're having to log into 5, 6, 7 different platforms. We wanted to simplify that for them, first and foremost. Second, the way that it expresses itself in the front end is meeting students and where they are, particularly with how they interact with their institution. And 9 times out of 10, that is going to be on the laptop. So we make sure we built for web first, mobile second. We do understand that students have a preference for mobile, but it's not necessarily their primary interaction with their institution. So that's one. The other piece from our front, I really want you to get this analogy of Arbol really being a central highway for students to navigate and manage their finances. Because we're able to pipe all of that data into one place and express to students where they stand today and the next steps and actions they need to take so that they're able to maintain their funding, cover their expenses as they change. We have them log into one place, and ahead of each semester, they're able to look, hey, do I have to complete the FAFSA? That could surface to them. Sends them exactly to where they need to go to complete that action. Hey, we took an extra class. We need to apply for more funding. Takes you right to financial aid. Hey, mom and dad are covering a portion of this. It sends you a link so you can collaborate with your mom and dad. So it simplifies, where you need to go into one place, particularly how you're interacting with the institution. So that's kind of how it all comes together.
That's great. I mean, I'll tell you, for the FAFSA clarity alone, it would be worth it. I mean, to me, it's like the NFL season. It ends, but it doesn't end. I never know when it's due. So totally. I want to talk about the community. So we're both in Buffalo, New York. And speaking of institutions, you've worked with both Canisius and Buff State, also schools that you attended. And these universities started with pilots and then scaled to campus-wide deployments. So how does it feel to you personally to be able to not only develop solutions, but solutions at colleges you attended? And what technology capabilities or features prove the most critical in moving from smaller student pilots to real enterprise deployment? I mean, these are pretty big institutions.
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's an honor to be able to give back to the institutions that gave me so much. at Buffalo State, I was able to be a member of the football team. I had my first scare there where I thought I was going to have to drop out because I had a shortfall my first semester that led to a hold of my account that had to get solved. And, as I kind of got to interact with my, college teammates and classmates, I came to learn that like the barriers from a financial perspective were the top reasons why folks were leaving. And it really didn't hit me until like I graduated and started to kind of understand and comprehend that a little bit better. As a small aside, one of my college roommates actually had an emergency, had to go back home, take care of mom, never made it back because couldn't afford to come back. It simply just couldn't afford the plane ticket back. So that stuck with me. And it's an honor to be able to, solve some of those problems that were getting in the way and folks kind of like, recognizing their potential. I don't believe that financials should get in the way. Same thing at Canisius. So that's my, first and foremost, an honor. Second, on what it takes to actually go from small to big. It really starts with, defining and really building a coalition around a subset of students that can most get the support, and also the teams that are maybe struggling the most to support their students. Now, talk about Canisius for a second. So Canisius is going through a pretty cool transformation where they are serving a lot more first generation students of color, students that have higher needs than before. Typically they were dealing with more of a traditional white male student. And with that came more needs, and financial needs in particular. What we did is that we actually started with that population that was growing and demonstrated success. What that did was build momentum both with the students and the staff that were supporting it so that we can get a broader coalition to support it. And then we can work out what worked and what didn't before we brought it into different teams on campus and also different student populations. So, really starting small allowed us to really work out the kinks, demonstrate success, build momentum, and then have a plan on how we scale it to more students moving forward.
That makes a lot of sense. And I could see a lot of growth. I mean, as I was reading about platform, I could see just other things like students need, right? There's housing, or sometimes there's sororities or fraternities, or they want to do a semester abroad. So, I don't know if you have thoughts on those areas, but, it is a big area, right? Students need a lot of things, and often I'm not sure how to pay for them, as I've noticed. So in addition, additional benefits. So your platform also handles sensitive student financial data and needs to comply with many standards. So for example, SOC 2, FERPA, and other standards as well. How did you architect the software to not only do everything else we've talked about, but to also meet very stringent enterprise security requirements without slowing down your innovation and growth?
Yeah. There's a two-pronged approach to that. First and foremost, when we hired our engineering team, it was a must that we hired folks who have built in higher EdTech before, understands the rules and regulations, and understands how to build enterprise software. So the moment that we started to build software, we already had as part of our requirements, making sure that we're compliant, the security standards that we need to meet, and making sure that we're following FERPA. And that was really important to us. Second is that does mean that you are spending more time doing that. But in higher ed tech, without spending that time, you're really not able to innovate because you won't get access to that data. So it's just it's a must. So it's just making sure that you're incorporating it into your plan, understanding and prioritizing exactly which data points are most useful and which you need, and tackling it from day one rather than letting it become a big issue and then remediating things, working backwards. So it is one of those industries where you kind of had to bake it into your plan from day one, especially for the type of work that we were doing.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, the amount of trust people must, need to have, you need to have that. So looking ahead, other emerging tech, whether that's more sophisticated AI, which we hear about a lot, predictive analytics, or new integrations, what's on the roadmap that has you excited? What are you thinking of next? Where do you see EdTech platforms like this going? And what are you personally wanting to do next?
Yeah. So I'd say the paradigm is shifting. It's shifting from software that maybe automates processes, or just from automating processes to automating labor. And what I mean by that is, for instance, we're now getting to the point where we're starting to build task automation so that students and families have to spend less time actually doing things like filling out the FAFSA, having to spend less time actually going and signing up for a payment plan or making certain decisions. So that's what we're really excited about, is about the task and workflow automation that we're starting to get into. And that works both in the students and the staff side.
Excellent. So speaking of AI, I asked an AI assistant to analyze your background and generate a closing question. So let's see what it came up with. David, you've successfully built technology solutions in both heavily regulated financial services and now higher education. Both industries are known for being slow to adopt new technology. What have you learned about introducing innovative platforms into traditional, risk-averse institutions? And what advice would you give to other tech entrepreneurs trying to do the same?
It really starts with finding the champion and the other side of the aisle. And the person that gets it, that understands it, that is going to whip the coalition together. It is very much a big part of the work. And my advice to any technologist out there would be the people map, the stakeholder map, that part of the problem needs to be solved too. Understand the key players that you need to have involved so that, you can innovate and build and adopt technologies. If you do not take the time to influence and build that coalition at the institutions that you're partnering with, whether that's in financial services or higher ed tech or gov tech, you're just not going to be successful. So just embrace it and understand that that's a part of the problem set to solve.
Great advice. So David, in closing, anyone listening, if they want to contact you, if they have a question about Arbol or the EdTech industry, how can they find you? Where are you online?
Yeah. First up, you can learn more about Arbol by going to www.growarbol.com. And you can contact me at david@growarbol.com. That's where I'm most responsive.
Well, David, thank you very much for sharing your insight. I learned a lot, not only about technology, but also as a parent about education. So you gave me a lot to think about. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time.